In this episode, Thunderbolt goes back in time and replaces Mike, Shad, and Scott with exact duplicates. Say you! Do you think anyone would notice? I'm Scott Reed, and I'm joined on this episode by
Mike Atchison
and Shad Schubert.
And we are going to be discussing some First Five with the first 5 issues of a JLA JSA crossover, which is actually 6 issues. Talk about what we've been reading, hopefully do some trivia, a CLZ shake. But first, let's do some hot takes. I'll go first. I did watch Echo on Disney Plus. I liked it. Of course, I'm probably a little bit biased because Echo is probably my favorite modern age comic book character. So, but to kind of give you a rundown without really any big spoilers, it should have been 4 episodes instead of 5. There's a character in this series named Biscuit that should have been completely removed from the story. All right. And that would have how you could have got it down to 4 episodes. Right. And for some reason, they felt the need to turn Maya Lopez into MacGyver for a part of an episode. I could have done without that. And it also has this thing where the random new power shows up at the end of a story because I guess the writers didn't know how to end it. So, but Alakwa Cox was awesome as Maya Lopez. D'Onofrio was great as expected. The one Charlie Cox scene was really, really good. So I grade it like a fine, very fine 7.0. I will watch it again, fast forward through the Biscuit scenes. But overall, I liked it. So but again, I'm probably a little biased. Yeah.
Yeah. Only 5 episodes, though. Huh?
Only 5 episodes. And Disney, for some reason, released all 5 at once. As far as I know, that's the first time they've released an entire series all at once. Maybe or something, at least one that I've watched.
Yeah, it's the first, at least first Marvel show that they've done that with, and there was word that it was because they weren't too confident in how it was going to go, and that's why they just released it all at once instead of dragging it out. And it was originally supposed to be like an 8 or 10 episode run, wasn't it? And they narrowed it down to 5. Yeah. I think it was much larger than that.
Well, I was hoping that we would get more Charlie Cox interaction because Daredevil is kind of critical to the comic book origin of Echo.
Yeah.
So but they took some of that storyline away for Hawkeye. So maybe there just wasn't as much for them to do with the character in that interaction. But the one Charlie Cox scene was good. So
was there sufficient action?
Yes. So there were quite a few fight scenes, though that's kind of one of the problems I think people have about the ending is there wasn't like the big fight, which in a way at least is something different. So that's how I'm currently trying to view it, is the ending wasn't just a big fight scene, but there was some good action, and there was also a lot of unnecessary fights and gunplay and stuff like that just didn't need to be there. But and then there was some silliness too in the fighting, but yeah, like I said, I don't want to get too many spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen it yet, but again, I enjoyed it. So, but I'm
it was originally 8 episodes was the original run, and then after production issues, they found some of them to be unreleasable. It says they narrowed it down. So with the Biscuit episode out, it would have been half the original.
Yeah. So and I think that would have been a better choice. So he was there for the comic relief, and it just was completely unnecessary.
Oh, okay.
Is Biscuit is that a costumed character or just a nickname?
It's a relative of Maya Lopez. It's his nickname.
Just a nickname. He likes bacon, egg, and cheese biscuits.
I don't know that they even explained it.
Who doesn't?
So, yeah.
True.
So, do either of you have any hot takes on anything before we jump into our first 5?
I wish I did.
I thought about watching What If, but I hadn't yet.
I'm through episode 3. I've made it through episode 3. 1 is decent. 2 and 3 are really pretty good. Okay. I haven't made it back to finish it up yet.
It's still all animated, correct?
It's all animated, yeah. That's well, the parts that I've seen is all animated.
Yeah, I enjoyed the first shot at that. So I got a lot. If I ever get the time, I'd like to watch some of that. I probably would watch Echo too. The only thing I've been watching is this documentary called The Vow about this cult type deal that me and my wife got hooked on,
and it doesn't sound comic book related, so
it's not at all.
Yeah.
So it's kind of good, but
yeah. All right, so no other hot takes. So let's jump into first five.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So okay, so I don't know, Mike. I guess since you selected this topic, maybe you should you want to lead into this.
Well, when we talked about it last, I guess it was, I don't know if it was on air or off air, but we talked about it around last episode, and we've been rotating companies, Marvel, DC, and Independence as far as the subject matter, and it just kind of popped in my head that I had read recently that this, or at least last year, was the 60th anniversary of both the Avengers and the Justice League, Justice Society crossovers. So me being sort of partial to JLA, I thought, well, maybe we talk about crossovers. I know technically it's not a character spotlight. We're basically talking about the first crossovers. So we're going to be covering.
We kind of threw that all out the window when we went with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because that was a team.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Anyway, so it didn't take long for us to break that. So
we ran off the rails, yeah. But that was worth it though. It just was hard to figure out. So if you technically we're only counting the first 5 issues,
yes.
Then we have Justice League of America. This is the 1960 Volume 1, issue 21, 22. Constituted the first crossover. Then issues 29 and 30 comprise the second crossover, and then we'll cover 37, and I have in parentheses, and 38. Yeah, because I
might as well finish the story, the two-parter. Yes,
right.
Yes.
So we expanded even our boundaries to 6 instead of 5, but same thing. It's a story, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So
but it was better to read 6 issues than to read 10 issues. So
correct. Yeah. And I don't know if we got our normal questions that you sort of ask us as a group, but yeah, I'll say in general, I'm glad we did this because having read some of those Gardner Fox written Justice Society All-Star Comics stories, when we were looking at the first appearance, our first 5 of Wonder Woman, we were like, what the heck? This is really bad. He's still very much plot driven. He's not character driven. He talks about, the characters all sound alike. They don't have their own voices so much, but the plots can be pretty kind of cool. I mean,
especially the last one I thought was particularly interesting.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it when we get there. So
they did get increasingly better. And
yes.
Each the first story was like, oh, this is rough, and then it was like, okay, the second one's not as bad, and then the third one, was absolutely better.
Borderline, it's almost good.
Right. And it's all looking through the lens of the 2020s compared to the 1960s. Too.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'll save that comment for later. Let's go through our questions here, and Mike, since this was your idea again, so, and this is probably lengthy for you, but what was your first introduction to? And maybe we should say specifically the JLA JSA crossover. So when did that? What was your first realization about crossovers and?
Yeah, well, everything that in my comic reading history, pretty much all of the first came from a comic that my uncle gave me, the one that my uncle that worked at World Color Press that printed all the comics back in the 70s. So I was trying to remember which one I would have been exposed to first. So I don't have a distinct absolute, I can put my hand on the Bible, swear that this was the first one. But what really I'm landing on is the JLA JSA crossover with Justice League 135 through 137 in 1976, where I was a 10-year-old kid, and this is the one where they introduced the Fawcett characters as being on Earth S, and King Cole was the bad guy in that story. I remember being so fascinated by the idea of other Earths, and even though it was printed a few years earlier, Earth X, the quality comics were, those characters were introduced in like JLA 107 and 108, something like that. But I know I didn't read that until I got it as a back issue. I didn't get that real time. So I have to land on Justice League 135 through 137. Got some pretty good covers on there. It's got a nice Joker cover, which I'm sure would make it kind of valuable these days because it's a rare appearance of Joker on a cover of a Justice League book. But yeah. So, and then I think the last one has Superman and Captain Marvel flying at each other. They're getting ready to, when they smash, they're gonna blow up the world. So
that's not the same issue where Captain Marvel's working for the Nazis, is it?
Oh, now you're getting into me trying to remember what the story was about.
Well, that's okay. Since we're not talking about that issue, we'll save that. So
it's quite possible because Captain Nazi was a Fawcett villain. I don't even remember who the antagonist was.
I just remember because it's somewhat, I guess controversial is not really the right word, but I guess there's a scene in that particular book where Captain Marvel is doing the Heil Hitler.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't know if this is the right. Yeah, I don't know if it is
a later one or something. So
it could be. It looks to me like, looking online, it's King Cole, Brainiac, and Mr. Atom were the main antagonists. But then again, there could have been a scene where the Nazis were part of that. So who knows?
Okay. All right, Chad, do you have any idea of when you might have first become aware of even the characters or the crossover?
Oh, absolutely. It was 2 weeks ago when you suggested this.
Oh, my gosh.
No, I remember Atch talking about it probably a couple years back, but that was probably my first introduction to the fact that there were these like crossover specials for sure. It wasn't anything that I was aware of. The characters themselves, yes. The concept of multiple Earths, yes, and that they did interact with one another. But these specific kind of event books that existed, no, not at all.
And I'm the same way. I did not know when I became aware that there were crossovers. I mean, my Justice League introduction is probably from the cartoon more so than the comics, right? So I'm just not for certain whenever I first became aware of them having crossovers and it had been a like regular thing. So, but I don't even know if I was aware of any like JSA until like any of the JSA characters even until maybe like was it Keith Giffen's Dr. Fate, like 4-issue Baxter printed series? So
really?
I'm trying to decide if I would have even been aware of some of those golden age DC heroes until that point. So it's tough to know on something like this. It's not as when it's a single character, sometimes it's a little bit easier to to pin it to something, but with it to be in a group like this, it's hard to say. So
yeah, now this wouldn't be the most memorable crossover that I have. That would be the one that's like in the 170s where Mr. Terrific was killed, and I was at that point, it was like 1978 or 1979, and I was buying my own comics then, so somehow I remember those a little bit more, and it was a kind of a whodunit story. But no, it's like when your memory plays tricks. You're like, okay, I remember reading stuff from way back before this, but there's no way I could have really been reading real time the earlier crossovers.
Right. And there's probably a real good chance because I used to be a person that read every single book I got. And that's not unfortunately the case any longer, but there is definitely the possibility that at some time somebody handed me a comic book that had a JLA JSA crossover in it, and I read it at that time. So
yeah,
and just don't specifically remember it. So
well, about I know we're not even talking about the books we're covering, but
yeah, no.
When this particular, the 130, what did I say, 136 through 138 or whatever, those 3 issues, what I remember being so cool is it introduced these Fawcett characters I never heard about other than Captain Marvel. And it was like, Bullet Man and Bullet Girl, Ibis the Invincible, Spy Smasher. There was some pretty cool, I remember being just awestruck by these characters. So again, a lot of that's just nostalgia.
All right. Well, let's see. So I guess I'm trying to figure out how to rephrase this question. So, what are your initial thoughts on some of these original crossovers of JLA JSA? So, Shad, I know you had some pretty clear thoughts on these. So, why don't you go first on this one?
I thought the pacing stood out to me quite a bit. That the pacing of these stories, and just I guess really the pacing of stories of this age, are much faster. I think that we would have seen in this, even one of these events would have, each character would have spun off into their fight with their specific person that they were fighting. Batman would have fought Owlman in his own issue, and then they would have came together, and it would have been this like 12 to 15 issues of an event. And so the pacing being much faster than modern comics does kind of gloss over a lot of what happens. The action just kind of is like, there's one where the Atom has to shrink down, and he gets on Green Arrow's arrow, and then he spins through a bunch of them, and it's just like none of this actually makes any sense whatsoever, but the end result is achieved. And so I think that and the improved plot of the story as the three kind of events were that we saw them improve. The second one was a little bit better than the first. The third one was better, and I actually read the fourth one because it was in the same collection I was reading, and that one was even a little bit more interesting than the others. So it definitely was like, oh, okay, these are getting better as they go on. And so yeah, that was kind of these characters together. Those were my kind of initial thoughts on them. Was more about story pacing and how they all kind of went.
To me, the thing that stood out, like on this version, is how I was going to say naive, but I think maybe a better word is innocent. The storytelling is, in that it's not a very complicated story. They're not complicated stories. And even when I first, like my first book, said it before, Avengers 184, in that issue, you got the Avengers. There's potential race issues in that issue. There's government interference. There's a villain who borderline commits suicide. All that happening in just like one issue. It's much more complex, and again, not as naive. I guess again, as I keep coming back to that word. So you look at these stories, and they're very simple. They're very innocent. It's geared clearly towards a 6 to 12-year-old, as opposed to modern DC, where they say they're geared towards 35 and 40-year-olds. So that's one of the big things that I notice about this version and these versions of these stories. So, Mike, what about you?
Well,
your take on the original.
So you both are absolutely right that they only could go up with the level of quality or complexity. I think the innovation was already good because this is the first time where there was a cross, universe where they actually, even though there was 2 or 3 Flash issues, I think 3 where both Flashes had met, and this is beyond, the iconic Flash of Two Worlds, Flash number 123. And then you had 2 more where they had met again. But at that time, there wasn't even the label of Earth 1 or Earth 2. It wasn't until this issue that they start labeling them. Anybody that's got a little bit of, I don't want to call it OCD, but it's OCD. You love to label stuff, You want little compartments for everything. And that's what I liked that about it. I liked the idea that this is something new. Yeah, it had some of the I found some things interesting that I've read this 2 or 3 times in the past at least, but I don't remember them. The fictional cities of Powers City or Casino City ever being mentioned before, but it's clear what Casino Town. It's clear that that's Vegas, but I have no idea where Power City is, where Kronos was where he was wrecking havoc.
Mhm.
But the plot is very much of the old Gardner style. You had a lot of little tricks of switching appearances and magical artifacts. So it was very simplistic, like you said. But it compared to modern, I won't even say modern day, because the last time we had a real crossover in this iteration or in this continuity was Justice League number 245. So, these continued on maybe a few times when, we had the post-crisis continuity, but it wasn't anything of the same because they were basically on the same Earth. They weren't on different Earths. But it didn't take long for them to jump the shark because, our second story, they bring in a third group. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but my point is that's what the big difference. I think in many of the crossovers, and they were annual, usually in the summer, I think, if not always in the summer, they featured a third group, whether it be the New Gods or it be the Legion of Superheroes or, anybody else, the Earth X, the Freedom Fighters, whatever. But it's I've never been a fan of Mike Sekowsky with his sort of squatty, blocky figures. His faces are okay, but then again, they don't have much. I mean, when you look at Superwoman, when she's been trussed up by Wonder Woman, she's got this same look on her face as if she's watching her favorite comedy on TV. I'm like, okay, there could be more work put into that. So
well,
anyway,
that's just the nature.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's just the nature of like this was just a bulk media at
Sure.
the time. I mean, it wasn't. If you were an artist, you weren't drawing comics. You were
Yeah.
doing something else, and this was more about getting stuff out quick. And
Mhm.
this was a time, a lot of people who don't like Kirby art, for example, they'll point to stuff in this era and they'll just look at that. It's like there's no backgrounds. And it's like, well, yeah, but he was doing 3 to 4 books a month, and now modern artists can't even complete 1 book a month. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like, so I understand what you're saying though. You're right. Like there's so many scenes of the characters just like running at you, and they're
Right.
all very, very generic looking. So
And they all look like they got a barrel for a torso. It's just
yeah.
Sikowski just was, I don't know. Now Murphy Anderson I don't know if he did all the art on some of the covers or if he just did the inking, but man, if Anderson's involved, it makes all the difference in the world because the covers were fantastic.
Let's see. So how closely does the version of the crossover match what we see in comics today? What do you think is the same? What would you consider to be different? So, Mike, I'll let you go first since I haven't really thought about this question yet.
Well, since they're pretty much non-existent today, and
Yeah.
like I said, the really thing that what made them unique was they were the super teams were not where they could actually get together or see each other easily. They had to go through some effort, whether it be through magic or a Green Lantern's ring or a transporter. They couldn't do it. Now, I guess the last crossover I've seen in recent years was I don't know if that was the Bendis Justice League and Legion, and it was just trash. It was hot trash. And I'm like, how do you not get that right? And there's a lot of reasons for it. It's not just Justice League reasons, but it was just, yeah. So to compare it to what we see in comics today, my answer is really you don't see it today, and not in the same context. Maybe in Marvel, I guess recently we were talking about the whole, the Ultimate Universe. You might see a little bit more, but I've said this since 1985, 86 when they consolidated all the universes. They lost that specialness when you can be on one Earth and run into the Justice Society, the Shazam family, everybody, and it's too crowded, and it doesn't make it special anymore.
I realize what we probably should have done is instead of starting with that first Justice League issue, we probably should have started with Flash of Two Worlds. that would have been like could have been like our first issue
Yeah,
for this,
yeah.
But oh well, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, well, one of the things that's changed is here we had Earth 1, Earth 2. Now, when we do these crossovers, we have infinite Earths and infinite versions. They can't. It's too much. Like Avengers Forever, which was a Jason Aaron story arc not too terribly long ago. At the end of that, we have the Legion of Dooms, where it's like that's probably not the actual term that gets used, but it's like every single Doctor Doom from across the multiverse. And then later on, we have all the Mephistos. So you have like thousands of Dooms and thousands of Mephistos.
Yeah.
And it's too much. It's Spider-Verse, and I'm picking on Marvel because it's easy to do. But into the Spider-Verse, where you have an infinite number of Spider-Men, and it's just instead of being simple and just a couple of Earths, well, now we've got an infinite number. So so it's
yeah.
There's nothing new under the sun, I guess. So all you can do is just go from 1 or 2, 2 or 3 to an infinite number. So it just gets bigger, but it doesn't get better.
No.
Doesn't necessarily get better. I don't know. Any other thoughts? Or Shad, what about you? Do you got any?
The only thing
same, different.
Same, different. I mean, I feel as though the teams themselves are interchangeable. So I mean, as far as like who is the Justice League in 2024, and who is the JSA in 2024? I mean, some of them are very similar in those teams themselves. Some of them have changed out and do change out every time there's a book for them. So that's hard to say. The only thing that really stood out to me was just an odd Wonder Woman doesn't have drilling powers anymore, does she? To just drill into the ground like a weird groundhog.
That's a Silver Age joke, usually reserved for Supergirl or Superboy or Superman.
Okay.
It's that they pulled that trick so many times in the Silver Age. I have to say, I don't remember ever seeing Wonder Woman do that before. And when I seen it, I was like, oh, please no.
That's so weird.
All right. Are there any moments or anything in the first 6 issues, the first 3 crossovers, that you'd like to call attention to? And I'm gonna start this one, Mike, because I'm gonna put you on the spot, and I'm gonna ask you a question. So I especially noticed it in the 3rd crossover story with Dr. Fate. He could not do anything magically if it was finished magic, right? And that's not the term. Oh, the term that he used. I went blank on what he accomplished. That's what it was.
Accomplished or completed or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, accomplished magic, and he kept. Oh, well, I can't turn these guys back into wood because that's accomplished magic. But was that always a thing?
No.
Okay.
No. I've never heard of that before. I'm sure I've seen it and don't remember it, but I'm probably not somewhere where I put so much scrutiny to the story. But that's just a plot little thing to keep him from making everything right. Yeah. So and it's not the only thing that's different about Dr. Fate then and now. It wasn't until maybe first issue special or one of those Secret Origins stories in the 70s where and maybe later, I don't remember exactly, but they started using the a symbol of the Ankh as being like when he uses his powers, you can see the Ankh symbol. Here it looks like he looks like Lightning Lad or something, or Black Lightning. He's shooting little lightning bolts that symbolizes his magic, and I never thought that was very good. But yeah, no, that whole accomplished magic is that's just some BS.
Yeah, okay, all right. I just didn't remember that from anywhere previously, and I was just kind of surprised by that. So all right. So Mike, you got a moment you want to call attention to?
I have a few moments.
Okay.
I'll say I'm sitting here highlighting my list. One of them is this just harkens back to my love of roll call lists. I know they went on for many, many years, but they were sort of helped identify Justice League Comics and any other team that joined them that they had on the cover, and sometimes on the splash page they would have like the scroll with everybody in the story. But I always loved the floating heads on either side. I like the idea of the JLA chairman the organizational. I mean, this is a group that voluntarily gets together, and Batman was the chairman this story, or at least the first story. I don't know if that it changed. I always loved Adam's floating chair. I'm like, I never did learn how that actually manages to float. If maybe Hawkman loaned some of his nth metal powers to it. Yeah. Okay, and many of these characters had appeared either in Flash 123 or Flash 137 or whatever. There was those 3 issues I was telling you about that were bringing back some of the Justice Society in increments. But some of them, this is their first Silver Age appearance in these stories. You got Dr. Fate was his first Silver Age appearance in the Justice League 22. Our Man, I mean, in his last appearance was, well, it's kind of retroactive. It was in Wonder Woman 242, but that was during Wonder Woman's series where it was basically stories of the Earth 2 Wonder Woman and Golden Age. So then you got Our Man. It's his first Silver Age appearance. His last appearance was at Adventure Comics 83, which was in 1942. So you're talking a nearly 20-year absence, or more than 20-year absence for him. Then you got Starman, whose last appearance was in 1945 in Adventure Comics. So some of these folks went a long stretch without being seen. There was a scene in Justice League 22 where Aquaman was water skiing behind, I think, Superman.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, what the heck? That's so stupid and so cool at the same time. And one thing that's a little bit of a nerd pet peeve of mine is that, okay, Dr. Alchemy cannot turn inorganic matter into living organic matter. So he was turning, I forgot the creature, he turned some things into to fight off the Justice. I think they were like winged dragons or horses or something. And it's just like Firestorm. You can't turn inorganic matter into living organic matter. So nerd check.
Maybe they were just, golems, inanimate golems.
Maybe. But that's too, yeah. And that's it. I'm going to stop right there.
Oh, you don't have to. I mean, you can keep going if you really want to. So, I mean, it's all right. I mean, this is your baby, so.
Yeah. I will say this. I agree with you guys wholeheartedly about Justice League, that last story arc, 37 and 38, easily being the favorite of the 3. Mm-hmm. I thought Johnny Thunder from Earth 1 being the bad guy and the comedic relief was hilarious. I mean, I actually had some smiling moments. I didn't guffaw and break down laughing, but there were some pretty funny little moments there. So I did like that, and it was just a way different story than the first 2.
Chad, you got anything you want to call some attention to?
Yeah, there were just a couple. I thought there was a moment where Batman and I think it was Wonder Woman that were riding Pegasuses. And Batman riding a black Pegasus was just a really cool image that I don't know if they've ever brought back, but I thought that was really neat looking.
They should have done that in that recent, what was it, Legend, or the medieval Knights.
Oh yeah, Knights of Steel, or
whatever that was. That would have been cool to add to that.
A cool callback, yeah. The other one is another Batman thing. He was fighting owls way before the Court of Owls because he fought Owlman, and I was like, oh, he was. There was an owl as his enemy way before that. And then my last thing was, what's the deal with Snapper Carr? I don't know this character at all, and he seemed pointless.
He is. He's the worst mascot ever. I mean, he makes Rick Jones look like genius. This is what happens when a 40-something-year-old man tries to write a teen, a hipster, not even hipster. What was it called back then? The teenagers. Anyway,
I would have went with hipsters, but I don't think so.
Anyway, his little thing was that he snapped when he was excited and happy about something.
Okay.
So that's why they call him Snapper Carr. So you'll see a lot of stories back then where he's just snapping away, and it's.
I gotcha.
You won't find many people that are clamoring for a Snapper Carr
appearance.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, or first appearance even, yeah.
Gotcha.
Well, it didn't take them long to go from just having Earth 1 and Earth 2, right, to introducing Earth A, with the Well, I would call them the Crime Syndicate, but what are they?
Earth, you mean Earth 3?
Earth 3. Oh yeah, because Earth A
Yeah.
was later. So you had Earth 1, Earth 2,
And
Earth 3, and Earth A, all inside of these 3 stories.
Mhm.
But Earth A was actually Earth 1 or 2, just converted because they switched to make them villains. I think it was Earth 1.
But again, there was the concept of Earth
right.
alternate, so they even called
They gave them the label.
there. So
Yeah.
so I'm sure that there is somebody out there who counts it, because it's the
it's in somebody's
1.
index, yeah.
Yeah, it's Earth 1 without the Justice League. So
I've got those. I forgot the company that put them out. That put out those indexes of. This is before the internet, and they had indexes of some of the ICG. Yeah.
ICG. Yeah. I'm pretty sure is what you're talking about. So
I read those backwards and forwards. Yep.
And I don't know why, but whenever going back to that Wonder Woman First Five and that first JSA story, that was, what was it, the All-Star Comics, whatever.
8. Mm-hmm.
8, yeah. I remember Johnny Thunderbolt in there, and like he was like hesitant to even call upon the Thunderbolt, right? Because he knew it was like just like a nuisance. Well, you kind of get that same understanding here in this particular, that third story where you have the Thunderbolt popping in, and he's more of a troublemaker than he is a superhero. So
yeah, and I think most of it's because Johnny Thunder isn't smart enough to ask the right question or wish the right wish, and then the Thunderbolt's like, sorry, pal, you didn't ask it right. So.
Yeah. It's like that genie who gives you exactly what you ask for.
Right.
So, yeah.
He reminded me of the what was the guy on Flintstones that called Fred Dum Dum all the time? What was his he was he an alien? What was he?
Yeah, like the green guy with the helmet.
Yeah.
Oh, like Kazoo or
Kazoo.
Like that. Was that it really? Okay,
I think that's what it was. Yeah, that's what the Thunderbolt reminded me of.
Well, if you want to read a pretty good story about the 5th dimension where the Thunderbolt actually comes from, the Bodnesian, Bodnesia is that fictional country where Johnny Thunder was born, or where
the monks, like Tibet, basically, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, right. So Mark Waid wrote a story in that it was the same run that Morrison started off, but it really explores the omnipotent power of those genies, and they're, we call them genies because that's all we know how to call them, but they're just they're from another dimension, and it's really good. I'd love to reread that sometime.
Now, and again, we're talking about simplistic storytelling, but in that third thing where Thunderbolt goes back in time and he puts in the criminals in place of the superheroes, and somehow one of these criminals is able to become Superman and have all of Superman's powers.
Yeah.
But as far as I know, he was still born on Earth. Yeah. So the yellow sun wouldn't give him the powers, but all of a sudden he had flight, and like they moved him to Mars so he could come back as Martian Manhunter. Batman I can get, but man, some of them were just.
I made the same note. I'm like, that does not work.
Oh, and I like Batman with the stubble and Flash with a little pencil mustache.
Yeah. Now they did go to the trouble to, when they flashed back to when Batman became Batman, they made him look like Detective Comics number 27, with that design.
Yeah. So it was silly, but it's amazing how much, because these were in the 60s, right? So, and then, like I said, my first book was 77-ish, okay, which was when Avengers 184 came out, and the maturity level of the storytelling is just, it feels more than decades, considering it was only about 15 years, but it feels like it's a lot more advanced, and it's even come a lot further since even when I started reading. So okay, so I guess the next question is, do you plan to seek out, or I guess in my case, read the rest of that first volume of JLA JSA crossover stories? So I know the answer for you, Mike, is you will always read these stories. But...
Oh yeah, I'll go back to them here and there. Yeah, I mean, and if DC ever brings back the Justice League, that was my real answer. I'm like, well, yeah, if DC ever does that, which I'm not seeing any hints of it yet, but I've got those. I've got the originals. I've got the Crisis on Multiple Earths trades that came out in the early 2000s that I can always go back to. So yeah, I'll keep doing it, I'm sure.
Shad, what about you? I know you already said you read the fourth story.
Yes, I did. I finished it because I was like, man, there's only like 40 more pages of this thing. I might as well just knock it out. And that weird little alien guy on that in that last story was neat. I can't remember. He was like the unknown or something.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was kind of neat. But outside of that, I'm probably not going to continue to read these specific ones. The multiple Earths, Crisis of Multiple Earths, but it does kind of get me into the mindset. I've never read any of the Crisis books, like the big Crisis books. So it makes me go like, I've dipped my toe in crises. So I feel like it's probably time for me to maybe start reading the big events at this point.
Unfortunately, to me, those Crisis books have lost their luster.
Okay.
Just because of the fact, like, especially when Crisis on Infinite Earths was coming out, that suddenly meant something. When that finished, it meant something.
Yeah.
Because you went from having that Infinite Earths down to the one Earth. I know that, Mike, you mentioned earlier when we were talking about Earth, just one Earth is too crowded for this.
Mm-hmm.
And it lasted for just a short period of time where you had the JSA move back into history and you had the modern heroes and you had the stuff that was, in the future, and you had kind of that nice, simplified maybe isn't the right word for it, but what Wolfman accomplished through that. And then for them to undo that within just a matter of a few years, it's like, why did they even bother, so.
It's, well, I don't know if I would say it. The story itself, I think, was still good. I think the whole impact of it is, it's not going to be as effective because we know everything that happened right after it. DC really dropped the ball by not planning what happens very clearly after the Crisis. They gave John Byrne Superman. They gave George Perez Wonder Woman. They gave Frank Miller and gave him Batman. But for the most part, it was like, how do we? They could have fixed. It could have made it a lot better if they just said at the end of Crisis on Infinite Earths, instead of saying nobody remembered the multiple Earths, which is what they did, what they said, they should have said, they do remember them. They do remember them. That it's just part now, because that's what they've gone back to. They've gone back to saying everything happened. And anyway, back then they still aren't listening to me, but I would have told them even back then that. So.
All right. So any final comments on JLA JSA?
Thanks. That was a good. I appreciate the indulgence of that. That was fun.
Good deal. All right. So what do we got next? Oh, so what we've been reading, right? So we decided since we had to cut our last what we've been reading short, we decided we take a couple more things that we've been reading recently and expound on those a little bit more. So Mike, I know you got a pretty good list. So why don't you lead off on the what we've been reading section here?
Well, I didn't do my homework and go back and listen to our last episode where we talked about this, so I'm not exactly sure where I left off, but my whole theme for what we've been reading was the stories over time at both Marvel and DC that were originally meant to be printed in a treasury or a big tabloid format. And I'm just going to limit myself to two more left because I don't think I talked about them, but one is Justice League of America number 210 through 212, When a World Dies Screaming by Jerry Conway and Rich Buckler. And when you read it, it's called, basically a case file. So you know that it's something that's not current time or whatever. But right away that it doesn't have some of the, even without knowing that, that it's not in the current time because it doesn't have Zatanna or Firestorm on the team. And basically it's the Atom and another scientist discovers some kind of element where it is starting to decay and it's causing all kinds of strange activity on Earth. And it turns out that was all maliciously planted on Earth by some aliens so they could come and basically strip the planet of its resources. Long long story short, it would have been a really good story to see in a tabloid or in a Treasury edition, because Buckler's art, when he has time, because he was always, even back then, known to be kind of slow, is really fantastic. The other one is, and this I would have said was apocryphal, except I actually read an article by J.M. DeMatteis in which he basically told the world that his first story arc of Captain America, which was 267 through 269, that he did with Mike Zeck, was originally meant to be a Treasury edition style book, and it was supposed to tie in with the Captain America TV movie, starring the actor Red Brown. And I don't know if, did you ever see that movie, Scott?
I vaguely remember watching it, and I've never watched them since. And I actually have, because Red Brown was at a Cape convention a few years ago.
Yeah.
And a buddy of mine had bought either some legit or bootleg DVDs of those Captain America movies. And I bought one of the DVDs because he didn't sell any of them, and he really, really wanted to get rid of some of them. So I got one to him as a favor, and it's still sitting shrink wrapped someplace. So.
Well, I mean, I've heard it's not great, but it's a good history piece, I guess. But basically, the idea was to capitalize on the movie, to cross promote or whatever. But Jim Shooter decided at the last minute, no, we're not going to use that. But sometime later, he asked DeMatteis to rework that project to a 3-issue arc in Captain America's regular series. So DeMatteis did. He had to rework it quite a bit because obviously Zeb Brown's character wasn't in it, but it's basically one of your standard Captain America stories where he does a lot of patriotic things, and it's good. It's fine. Mike Zeck's art's probably the best part about it. And again, I love unique, interesting things about stories, so I wanted to read this. And yeah, so that was, I haven't really been reading much of anything else except what we read for preparation for an episode here or there.
All right, Chad, you got ones you want to call out to?
Yeah,
good or bad?
Yeah. Well, I've got a good and a bad, so I'll do the good one first.
Okay.
I finished reading the Little Monsters. It's a 13-issue series by Jeff Lemire with art by Dustin Nguyen. And this is a story about the last children on Earth, presumably, and they're all vampires. So what do these vampire children do when there's no people to eat and whatnot? And so it's a pretty cool story because they really focus on these children, and there's a lot of them. I think there's like 12 or 13 that you have to kind of know and learn, and they it's all black and white except for the blood is red. So it's kind of one of those stories where you really have to focus on facial features and try to figure out. And Dustin Nguyen has all those characters kind of look very similar. So that was something that originally kind of turned me off, and I was ready to stop reading it about halfway through, and I kept going. And by the end of it, I was really glad that I kept with it because they end up finding these humans, and they figure out that the elder vampires had told them to stay in one spot in the city, and why did they tell them to stay in the city? And it's a really interesting kind of story, and I love the way it kind of wraps up, and the whole reasons why they weren't allowed to, or they weren't supposed to know that there were other humans even at all, was all really neat. So I enjoyed it. I bought it issue by issue, and it's been like I've teeter-tottered between my like get rid of pile and my keep pile, and I finally was like, I love Jeff Lemire's writing so much that I decided to keep it ultimately after it was done, even though I was conflicted, and I think it was just because if Jeff Lemire would have drawn the book, it would have been a no-brainer for me.
What did the kids feed on then? The vampire kids, if they didn't have
other animals or animals,
Yeah.
I guess, not other animals, but like squirrels and rabbits
Yeah.
and stuff like that still existed.
I mean, that was what the Anne Rice. I remember that the quote unquote good vampires in the Anne Rice novels that didn't want to kill humans or mutilate them or whatever or feed on them, they would, rats or whatever they could get their hands on.
Well, and I'll spoil it because I'm sure there's nobody that's holding on to their seat on what the whole reasoning was. But it was really cool. Is that the whole reason that they didn't want them to know about the eating humans was that eating humans aged a vampire much quicker than, and even though you still lived hundreds of years, you didn't live forever. You would die when you drank human blood versus when you were able to live off of the land a little bit more per se. You were able to stay more youthful.
Vegan vampires.
Yeah, it's a vegan version of vampires. Absolutely.
Just living off the land
thing.
like Daniel Boone. Yep.
Yes, exactly. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And I was, yeah, like I said, it's just a really neat story.
Yeah.
That idea of like there being a limited number of quote unquote resources left is like a constant story plot. It's like I remember back in Justice League Europe, early on in Justice League Europe, they had that again multiple dimensions. They had that other dimension with they weren't the Reavers. What were they called? But anyway, they lived on this world where the villains had won, and there was humans left that they had to be careful about torturing them.
They were the extremists.
Extremists, thank you. And they, like at the beginning of one of the issues, it's like, oh, well, we killed like the last human that we had left to torture. What are we gonna do now? We're so bored. So that's why they come into like the Justice League Europe world to, have more people to torture. It's like it's really kind of dark, but it's that same kind of idea. It's like, oh, we're running out of resources for our whatever.
Little trivia on those extremists. They were designed. They were the heroes of some of them. The heroes of that world or dimension or whatever was the heroes of Angor, and they were meant to be analogs of the Avengers. So you had like the Silver Sorceress, who was Scarlet Witch. Yeah. So anyway, and then the villains were also supposed to be analogs of Marvel villains. Everybody from Doctor Doom to, I forget off the top of my head, but yeah, they were meant to be knockoffs.
I need to go back and reread those because it's been a long time since I've read the Justice League Europe. So, well, I've got a pretty good list here. I'm trying to decide what I want to talk about. I'll talk about this one first. So last year there was a 5-issue series from Marvel called Hallows Eve. Mm-hmm. All right, and the premise to this, now I can't remember exactly when this character got introduced, but the main character, and I assume it's Hallows Eve is the main character. It's been so long; it's been a while since I read it. So, but she basically gets a stack of Halloween masks, and whenever she puts on the mask, she gets some traits based on the mask. And like early in the story, somebody else gets one of her masks, and it's a werewolf mask, and then bites a security guard. He ends up turning into a werewolf. But anyway, there's this whole story about this group trying to get the mask from her and trying to figure out who she is, and she's like working secretly with the police by pretending to be a cop because one of the masks let her looks like a cop, and it's just a whole bunch. It's really I don't know. It's pretty simplistic storytelling. It kind of feels like some of those JSA, JLA stories. It's not something, if you want to really, really light read, something that's not taking itself, I don't feel like too seriously. I don't, know that this is I think this was like one of those, let's play off of Halloween. I think these books were out in that October time frame of last year. It just kind of leaned into the season a little bit. It's not great, but it's a quick, simple story, simple read. So it was. I don't regret reading it, but yeah, I'm not going to be. Oh, you got to read this book because it's so good. Oh, Mike, back to you. What do you got for us?
Oh, I did the 2 in a row. I thought we were. I'm sorry.
I just assumed you did follow instructions. So
I'm good at that.
So I will let you. We'll let you take another one if you want to.
Well, I've got one more that I didn't mention, and that's the other story that was intended to be a treasury, and we know this because there was in this little bitty digest that this was printed in, Sergeant Rock Prize Battle Tales of 1979. It was a DC Special Series number 18, and in the back of it is one of those tabletop diorama drawings where you're supposed to be able to, cut it out and put it on, make a diorama, right? So, but it's on the actual paper and not on any kind of cardstock cover, and it's teeny tiny. And so that's the story is by people in the industry or that follow these things. They say this had to have been originally intended as a treasury, which, to be honest, I think it would have been pretty cool because there were 10 reprint stories of Sergeant Rock, Enemy Ace, Unknown Soldier, and some random stories from the past going back to 1957. And honestly, yes, the war genre can be overdone and very formulaic and repetitive, the stories, but there were some good ones in there, and most of the stories had Joe Kubert on art, and I would have loved to have seen his art in a treasury in the oversized. And that's it.
That the last treasury?
That's the last one I have, yes.
Okay, all right. Chad, what you got?
The other thing I wanted to talk about was something I didn't love, but it was okay. Was the Star Wars hyperspace stories. It was a 12-issue run that took a little bit longer than 12 months to come out. They had some delays in it, but this is one of the Dark Horse books, and it followed. It was each individual issue was a different story, and some of them dragged a little bit. Some of them were a little bit better than others. And as you read it, or as I read it at least, I started to notice that the stories all had this weird little Wookiee stuffed animal doll in it. And so if it were a better story, I would read it again and figure out how, because I think it's real. The whole story is about this doll being passed through different people all throughout the 100 years before Phantom Menace and after the last whatever the last movie was, Skywalker movie. And
we've blocked it out of our memories.
I know. And so it actually would have probably been a pretty cool premise if the stories were a little better. And I think that this is between this and the Star Wars Yoda series that I talked about last time. We talked about what we've been reading. I have decided that I will no longer be buying Star Wars mini-series, and I've been burned on them enough, and I feel as though the quality story writing is probably only in the main titles that are ongoing, and we'll refrain from buying these little miniseries, though I love a miniseries much more than I love an ongoing. But
well, to make you feel better, I am old enough to be your father, Shad, and I still fall prey to the whole spin-off miniseries and think, oh, that sounds cool. Yeah. And then I get into the quality and I'm like, I just wasted, $25 on
absolutely
on these issues. Yeah.
There was a time when the miniseries could be really, really good or really, really important. And I think back to things like the first Wolverine miniseries,
Yeah.
And there are moments those can define characters.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part now, the miniseries are just things that get in the way of your regularly monthly story. It's almost like, you want to skip the ad button as you're watching something online, because it's, nothing, the end result of the series now, nothing's going to change, so it's just like, it's back to just, status quo at the end. So something crazy happens, and then by the end of the series, status quo's back.
Yeah. So, and in some ways, I think they're using them as a showcase issue or a new talent showcase for new talent, which is fine, but it's not always packaged or promoted that way, and you get a little disappointed when you see some of it. I wish they'd go back to that whole new talent showcase model that they had in the 90s, and you knew when you were paying for it, you were like, okay, I'm going to get maybe some not really refined stuff, but I'm going to check these new creators out, because
DC did that not too long ago with they had some of those square bound 100-page new talent showcase books. They might have even just been like the Walmart things or something. So
well, and even like the Marvel Voices books have been
that's
a good version of that, but they're one-offs, but 12 issues of not, I don't want to say mediocre talent, because they're doing way better than I could, but to not have solid storytelling in any of those 12 issues really is just like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, speaking of limited series that go nowhere, I'm going to bring up Danger Street. Danger Street by Tom King, and I'm forgetting the artist's name, so I'm just scrolling back to the first page. Thank you. Yeah.
Right.
So basically, the idea behind this is that Tom King took all of the characters who there was that first issue special series from DC back in the 70s. It was the 70s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you had Dr. Fate and Starman and
Warlord.
Warlord and Green Team, and I guess they're the Danger
Lady
Street
Cop.
boys, Lady Cop. And
can I stop you there real quick?
Yes.
If you're going to spoil anything, I haven't gotten past 9 or 10 in that
Well,
series.
I may spoil a little bit, but
I can take my headphones off and you give me the high sign when you're done.
Well, okay.
Well, no, I'm sure you want me to hear something, but
I tell you what, I'll just switch then. All right, and we'll talk about this after you have read it. So what I'm going to switch over to then, as my second book, if I can get this opened up, is we were talking about anthologies as well. So from IDW. There is, and I got to remember which one of these because I read two different Rocketeer stories recently. One was a 4-issue series, and then one was an anthology book, and I'm trying to remember which one this is.
We read The Great Race together, I think.
We read The Great Race together, yeah. So these are different. There was another 4-issue series and another anthology, and let me just flip through this real fast and see if this is it. Okay, so it's Rocketeer High Flying Adventures. Now this has some terrific talent on this because I guess this is like so many creators wanted to do an homage to Dave Stevens' work, so they had the opportunity to do that. So like I'm just flipping backwards. Written and drawn by John Byrne. I remember there was a lot of Walt Simonson. Louise Simonson has a story written in here. There was the Walt Simonson. I'm gonna flip back through a couple more just to kind of give you Matt Wagner. I think best known for Grendel. There is a Kyle Baker. You may remember him from when we did Red, White, and Black. Or no, what was it? Red, White, and Truth, Red, White, and Black. That's what
Truth,
it is.
yeah.
Yeah, Truth. There's a Chris Sprouse drawn Dave Steve or Rocketeer story. So there is some really, really here's a name you'll remember, John Paul Leon.
Yes. Yeah.
He just
passed away this past couple years ago.
Yeah, so he has a story in here. Paul Dini is writer, Bill Morrison on art. So I mean, terrific talent in this. And these are all 5 to 8 page stories by these creators, and this is a long book. I'm looking at it; it's 260 pages of these. So the Rocketeer High Flying Adventures. I actually read it off of Comixology, and if you're a Comixology subscriber, which now you have to read in the Kindle app, which that's neither here nor there. So we're probably short timing it on Comixology even as a name. This if you like Rocketeer at all, this is actually really, really good. So,
what's it called again?
So it's called The Rocketeer High Flying Adventures.
High Flying Adventures. Okay.
Yeah. And like I said, it is really, really good. And it includes a lot of Dave Stevens imagery in it, but we got some Alex Ross stuff, John Cassaday.
He's good.
Yeah, I mean, you can just Mike Allred for Allred fans. Kurt Busiek, Michael Kaluta. I mean, just the names that are involved in this project. There's Mark Wade. Of course, he's written a lot of Rocketeer post Dave Stevens anyway. Darwin Cook has a story.
Oh man, that
yeah.
Has to be good.
So there's Gene Haw. I know you like Gene Haw.
I do. Yeah.
He draws a Rocketeer story. So great art, and it just kind of gets you to a story, gets you to the point, the punchline. 5 to 8 pages each story. It was really, really good. I may even try to. This is one I probably should find and pick up a physical copy just to actually have it in the collection. So it's that good. So I guess that means it's got to be at least a very fine 8.0. So.
There you go.
And now you got to hurry up and read Danger Street so we can talk about it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I will put it on my nightstand tonight.
All right.
Do we need to make that a book we read?
I didn't like it enough to want to read it again.
Got it.
So
Okay.
my opinion is no, but Mike, if you feel strongly that we should talk about it on the air, then I'm okay with that as well. So
no,
my vote is no.
we can maybe do a short version of it based on Scott's memory because it's pretty recent, but I wouldn't have a problem. Honestly, I'm going to have to reread all of the first 8 or 9 issues anyway because I know I'm missing little hints that King is dropping here and there. And
you're not missing anything. Just go on. Just get it over with.
Okay.
Just read the previous issue that you'd left off from, and
it's just not that good.
It just felt like sort of a square peg going into a round hole or something.
It's all very forced. So
yeah.
And nothing changes at the end. So
okay, well,
that's just it. Even though it doesn't, it's not even part of the DC proper. Nothing changes at the end.
Yeah, that's okay. Well. Now I do want to finish reading it because honestly I'm not spoiled because I kind of had those suspicions and anyway I'm spoiling your spoilers. So
that's right. Yeah. So it's not like Doomsday Clock, which felt so good for 6 to 9 issues and then fell apart. This was just it finishes like it starts. Yeah. Now, if you love the first 9 issues and were just blown away by it, then maybe you'll appreciate the last 3. But
yeah,
it was just more the same. So
let me ask you this.
Okay.
This isn't scripted. We didn't plan this, but we talk about a lot of Tom King books. We review a lot of Tom King books. What is the one you've liked the most out of all that you've read or that we've reviewed together? Because we've all had issues with different ones to different degrees. Mm-hmm. And that's for both of you and Shad both.
Okay. So
Woman of Tomorrow.
Okay. So you got Supergirl, you got Mr. Miracle. You had the Babylon,
Sheriff of Babylon.
Babylon. I haven't not read Omega Men that he did.
Oh yeah, Rorschach was his, right?
What's that?
Rorschach was his.
Mm-hmm. Of course, you had the Batman, his extended Batman run.
Mm-hmm.
So Strange. I am going to. Oh yeah, Strange Adventures. I'm going to go with Rorschach as being my favorite out of all of them.
That's fair.
But they all have that, and that's the one that really doesn't have the fatal. I don't remember if I found a fatal flaw in that one like I do in a lot of the other books. That story-wise bothers me. And then I'm probably Shad. I think Supergirl is right up there as well, and even Mr. Miracle. If I can get past the fatal flaw, Strange Adventures, the fatal flaw really bothers me in that one. So. Of course, the fatal flaw really bothers me for Mr. Miracle as well, but it's I don't know. I guess it doesn't bother me as much as it does for Strange Adventures. I feel like they're all well written, but sometimes the good writing on a pointless story doesn't matter.
Well, we're all three. Well, I'd say 2 of us are. Me and you, Scott, are from the age of more continuity-driven storylines. At least have some aspect of it, and most of what he writes does not fit at all very well in continuity, even loose continuity. But yeah, you're right.
I can get past that as long as the story was worth telling. Yeah. And just sometimes the story just hasn't been worth telling. And Danger Street to me is an example of that. It was just very forced. It's like, oh, here's an idea. Let's write a story about all these guys. First issue special. It's like
I guarantee he probably made a better run at it than most writers, taking that premise and trying to fit in the Warlord and Metamorpho and Starman, the blue skin Starman, and all of those Lady Cop into a coherent story. He probably did better than most. Yeah. I'm sure he did. But I think the premise took over instead of whatever.
It was more about how can we make this work than should we even tell this story.
Yeah. So I'm with you guys both about those are actually the 2 I would have thought of. Superman Woman of Tomorrow being my number 1 and Rorschach being number 2. Yeah. At the very bottom would be Heroes in Crisis. And
I have not read that yet, and I haven't read Omega Men yet. So
it was beautiful art by Clay Mann, and had all of these characters, all of these obscure characters, and high profile and obscure characters in DC, and the idea of them all having to go through mental health crisis or counseling to a degree, because that makes sense. There's a lot of trauma in the superhero life, but the story is editorial got involved and told him whatever he's going to do it to this character, and that was bad DC.
Yeah. And that's the out that I give him on that story, is that I've also heard that was interference. So, that's probably not what was supposed to happen, but he was made.
Most of the people that got killed off, the characters they probably needed to be killed off because you didn't know what happened to him anyway. I mean, anyway, sorry, that was a little tangent.
No,
but
that's all right. That's all right. Yeah. So, all right. So you want to embarrass me, Mike?
Yeah. I won't. I don't. So,
okay.
Scott, you want to remind the listeners what we're doing with this?
So what we're doing, my unopened at the moment, comic book trivia. This is from Blood Moon Comics. And basically they I've only looked at the first page of questions. So apparently we have about a very terrible story and about 8 trivia questions per page. So last time, the first time we did this, we just did the 3 questions on the back. And the premise is that one of us will read the questions and answer them and just as truthfully as they can, how many you got right. All right. And then we'll live, quote unquote live, we will present the questions to the others and see how many out of the same number you can get. So right now I'm winning 2-0. So if we count the first one, because I was 3 for 3 on the first one, I was 7 for 8 on the second one. So we're going to find out how we're going to do on the third set here. So,
okay.
So did you get a chance to answer the questions yourself, Mike?
I looked at them and I didn't compare my answers with the actual answers.
Okay.
I'm sure I'm wrong because I really just have no idea about most of them.
Okay.
There's one I should know, but I don't, and there's one I absolutely know, and that's I'm 1 for 8 on this.
Wow. Okay. All right. At least what you think, if you haven't officially.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So hit us with the questions.
So how do you want to do this? I'm going to read the question, or you just give you guys. Do you want to raise your hand, or
no? We work together. Yeah, we work together.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. So
like
both
we did
together.
last time. Yeah. So we're this time. Shad and I are a team.
Okay.
Shad punted.
I'm the assist.
Yeah. Shad punted and said he will be the perpetual assist.
Unfortunately, there's no Star Wars related questions here. All right. Question number 1.
Okay.
What is the full villain name for Slade Wilson?
Okay. So Deathstroke. Okay. So Shad, mine answer is Deathstroke the Terminator. Hopefully that is the complete full answer.
Yeah. I forgot about the
Deathstroke the Terminator. All right, so that's my final answer is Deathstroke the Terminator.
I would agree with that.
And what issue of Teen Titans did he appear in?
So that would be issue number 2.
Very good. That was a bonus.
Bonus. Okay. All right. I'm sure that's the one that you 100%.
That's the one I knew. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I at least tie you. So that's good. Okay.
Okay. What is the name of the doctor who killed Blade's mother?
Oh, wow. The doctor who killed Blade's mother. So that would have to be from Tomb of Dracula 10. But I have no idea who that would be. So I am going to guess something very, very odd. I'm going to assume that you don't have
Dr. Doom.
Well, I was going to go with, and I don't know that he's even a doctor. So, then I just thought of somebody else that I could guess. Okay, I'm going to go with Jericho Drum is my guess. I'm certain that's not right, but it's just he becomes Brother Voodoo, so that's why I'm going with that one because of the supernatural relation there. But
okay,
so I'm sure I missed that. But
and Shad, you said Dr. Doom, and that's your final answer?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, okay. My backup one was Dr. Druid. which also I'm certain is wrong, but he actually had a character before Dr. Droom, not Drum, but Droom,
Right.
who
Mm-hmm.
preview. So
Predecessor.
all right, so what is the correct answer?
It's misleading when they ask you for the name of the doctor because the answer is Deacon Frost.
Okay, so that was from Tomb of Dracula. So
Okay.
All
right, so
I'm 1 for 2. All right.
1 for 2. Number 3. Conan the Barbarian was created in 1932 by whom?
Oh, well, that's Edgar Rice Burroughs, right? Do I have that name right? Edgar Rice Burroughs.
That is a name.
Yes. Yeah. It is a name. Is it an important name? So yeah. Okay. So is that right? Or no? Wait a minute. No. Oh gosh, this is embarrassing.
I need to turn off my video so I don't give you any.
Well, believe it or not, you've been frozen since about 10 minutes into this podcast.
Yeah, that's true.
So you have no video. So
it's a thinking face that.
Yeah.
or some sort of face that you've made.
Oh my gosh. It's tough when you're on the spot with these things.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yes, no, because then all of a sudden it's like Robert Howe. Oh. Man, okay, I'm taking too much time because having nothing going on.
Right.
While you're recording is dead air. So
yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Let's just go Edgar Rice Burroughs. Mike.
No, Mike. Hello.
Mike. Hello, Mike. Did we lose you? Did he bail out on us?
Oh no.
So he's not only frozen.
We're never gonna find the answer.
That's well. I guess I can open up my copy.
Oh.
He is now completely gone.
There we go.
So, and he's back as a guest user. So,
all right.
Yeah, I tried to turn off my video and it froze.
It just took you out completely.
All right. Yeah. So my guess was Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Okay. Final answer?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, guess what? That was my answer as well, and I was wrong.
So it's Robert.
You're. This doesn't count, but you keep trying. You're gonna get it.
So it's like Robert. What?
It's Robert E.
Howard.
There, you got it. Yeah.
Who was who did Edgar Rice Burroughs? What did he do? What did Edgar Rice Burroughs do?
He did Tarzan. He did. He might have done
Robert Howard, and he also did Warlord of Mars. Gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, I screwed that up. I should have gotten that one right. I apologize to any listeners who are screaming at their microphone because that one was easy, and I should have got that one. All right, so now I'm 1 for 3. Man, that's
1 for 3. Okay. Number 4, and this is the one I should have gotten. Which supervillain first appeared in DC Comics Presents number 27 in 1980?
DC villain in DC Comics Presents 27. Okay, so that's the
in 1980
issue.
Is that what you said?
Yeah, well, that's the issue that also had the preview of the new Teen Titans in it.
No.
That
was 26.
It was 26? Oh, okay. So 27 would have been. I think this one was earlier, but it was. Okay, I may have the name partly wrong here. Was it? So there's Morgul, who has like the war world. You know who I'm talking about, Mike?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's my answer.
What was it again?
I think it's like Morgul. Oh,
sound like you're gargling.
I know it does. I am. It's. I'm trying to remember his.
You're on the right track.
Yeah,
you're one letter off. It's.
Oh. Okay.
Is it with the D? Morgul?
No, I don't.
It's okay. So let me give you one. Let me give you a hint. I'm just going to give you a hint.
All right.
And maybe it'll trigger the name. But this is the famous Sweet Mercy, or not Sweet Mercy, Black Mercy, the plant where it got attached to Superman's chest and made him go into basically a coma because he was dreaming about his perfect life back on Krypton.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Maybe I'm wrong about that. That may be a whole different story. Yeah. But it's the same bad guy.
Okay, but I thought it was Morgul.
His daughter played it. his daughter played in the Suicide Squad. He made an appearance in that James Gunn Suicide Squad movie.
Ratcatcher?
Well, the Ratcatcher. Nope. Okay, no.
Except, okay, I'm going to give it to you. It's
Yeah,
going to be
go
like
ahead.
7/8 of a point. It's
That's
Mongol.
Mongol. Okay, Mongol. All right. Okay.
I didn't get it. I could not think of it.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna take half credit
That's
on
pretty
that.
good. I was gonna say
Okay.
Captain Cold.
I know the character, and he has Warworld, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's been many generations of Mongols. It's more of a title than it is a name.
Okay.
All right, number 5.
All right.
Which villain is the half brother of Kraven the Hunter?
I did not know Kraven had a half brother.
Yeah.
Half brother of
Yeah, me either.
Kraven. Wow, I had no idea that Kraven had a half brother. I guess maybe these questions get more difficult after the first page.
They might.
Okay, so it has to be somebody Russian. All right. So, but okay. I'm gonna go with
Black Widow.
No, it wouldn't be, because she wouldn't be considered technically a villain. So, I'm gonna go with the red. No, can't go with the Red Guardian. So, okay, Radioactive Man is Chinese. So I'm going. My Soviet super soldiers is what I'm working through right now.
Through?
Yeah, I'll just go with the Red Guardian because I really don't know.
Okay, Chad, do you have any contribution?
What is it? Who's the Yelena? The
Yelena
white...
Belova.
Yeah. That's what I got.
Okay. No, it's the Chameleon.
Okay, no idea on that one. I did not know that they were related. So, okay,
I mean,
interesting.
I don't know the character. Yeah,
I
think these are getting a little bit harder.
Did it give a reference for that?
No, it just says.
Okay,
I mean, the question and
You're
the
supposed
answer.
to take his word for it.
I guess so. I'm gonna look that one up. So, okay, all right. Next one, man. I'm
okay.
This.
You're still beating me. You're like 1.5 points instead of 1. Okay, so number 6, and you might get this.
Okay.
What is the name of Spawn's, that is Al Simmons' widow?
Okay, so I can see her face, and then she ends up marrying Al's best friend, and nope, I do not have it. Nope. I don't know.
Okay, Chad?
Yeah, no. Alice.
Alice. It's Wanda Blake.
Okay, not what I would thought. So I'm glad I didn't waste time trying to guess it. So, all right, next. How many we got left? Because this is bad.
2 more left. 7 and 8.
2 more.
Number
okay.
7. Number 7, I thought I had, but I was wrong.
Okay.
So it was named the character whose first comic appearance was in NYX number 3 from 2004.
Well, that's X-23.
That's not what they say here, but could be. But they give an actual name.
Okay,
I mean, I'll give it to you if it's the name.
Well, hold on. Let me see if I can remember her name, because that's X-23, which is Wolverine's daughter, and her name. Oh my gosh, why did I forget her name? Because I just know her by X-23. Why can't I remember her name?
I couldn't either, but I didn't know what name they gave me here, if that was actually X-23.
Okay.
So I had X-23. So.
Okay. Did you say X-23? Did you say X-23 as your answer?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then that I mean, if that's the correct answer, then you got it correct also. I would say so.
So does Laura Kinney ring a bell?
Yes. Laura Kinney. So that's X-23. So yes, X-23. Right. So you have 2. I have 2.5 now.
Yep. Okay.
All right. Last chance. Holy smokes.
Last chance. Which hero's real name is Eric Brooks?
Eric Brooks. Hero's real name is Eric Brooks. And what's bad is they don't even give you like comic universes in this one. So Eric Brooks. I do not have any idea idea. Eric Brooks.
Because that's definitely not Magneto's last name, right?
No,
'Cause he's
no.
Eric.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not Magneto. I'm gonna guess because I feel like we've not really had very many indie questions, so my gut says this is probably an indie character anyway. So I'm trying to think which of the Image guys would name somebody after themselves. See, Youngblood was a team. Okay, it's not Savage Dragon. So I am going to make Prophet my final answer.
Shad.
Magneto. I know it's wrong, but
I'm going to give you 2 hints. One is it's not an independent character; it's a Marvel character.
It's a Marvel character. Okay.
And second hint is that this character's name was already mentioned in one of these previous questions.
Oh, snap.
That's a pretty good hint.
That is a pretty good hint. I'm going back to the questions. Okay, we had the Craven question. We had the Chameleon question. We had the or not, the Chameleon was the answer to the Craven question. I'm trying to think the other Marvels. There was a Deathstroke. There was a. It's not the Chameleon.
I wish I could turn my camera on so you could see me grinning. I can't get the camera to come on.
So I don't have any idea.
Oh, you're
Chameleon.
Yeah.
Nope, it's Blade.
Blade.
Oh, really?
We had the second question was, what was the name of the doctor who killed Blade's mother?
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know that was Blade's name.
I guess I didn't know that either. Oh, man, okay, that was terrible. All right.
I wouldn't even know that he would be called a hero. I thought he was kind of like an anti-hero.
Well, he is, but he goes through. He's a hero now because, well, they're all heroes eventually. Any popular character becomes a hero, with at least in Marvel. So,
well, the last. I don't have any more questions, but I did want to say that you remember you pulled the card out last time.
Yes,
and you read
the trading card.
I've got the same one. I think it's which of these comics began as a cartoon series. You remember that?
And there's no answer. Yeah, there's no answer to the question.
Yeah, you just have the list. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right, this is going back in its
back in its bag. Okay. All right.
Board. And
that was terrible.
Well, they must be making these tougher, or we're.
Hopefully, because the first 8 I thought were super easy. So.
Yeah.
Okay, and the 3 on the back. So I guess I got the easy ones, and you got.
Now
the
it's even in and out. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I definitely got the raw end.
You want to CLZ shake and wrap this episode up?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay, I got to get out of. To get back to where I have everything and not just a couple of things.
Oh,
hey, speaking of Justice League, all right, which we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
So, wow, this is Justice League /International /America 25. And of course, this is part of the Bwahaha League. We've got with, the Giffen DeMatteis run, at least I believe it is. I'm looking at the plotter.
Yeah, that is.
Giffen DeMatteis with Kevin Maguire artwork.
Is that Kevin Maguire on the cover there?
It's the cover.
Or Adam Hughes.
Cover penciler is Kevin Maguire. Yep.
Okay.
And let's
see.
see.
That was probably one of the last ones that he did.
Mike McCone is the penciler on the interiors.
Yeah.
So this will be one of his last covers. I do not specifically remember anything from this issue. It would have been crazy if it had the Extremists in it, though. That would just been happen it all.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's got a little bit of booster of blue and gold story in it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, again, this run was, I think they had about another 2 years left in the run at this point before it kind of went downhill with like that breakdown storyline. But
I just actually appeared with Shag Matthews on. He has an actual podcast that is called the Bwahaha Justice League. Yeah, so our podcast. So we covered issue, I think 56, which was I think 4 issues. I think the last issue was 60 in breakdowns.
Okay.
And before it rebooted with Dan Jurgens.
Okay. All right. Who's next?
I'll go ahead and go.
All right.
We got Superman Woman of Tomorrow, issue 1.
Supergirl.
Wow.
Or Supergirl, yeah.
Supergirl.
Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. Yeah.
There we go.
You got all the words in there, just not in the right order.
What do we have to say about this? I mean, this book
we've already
is
talked
great.
about it once. Yeah.
We talked about it in this episode once already. So yeah, there it is, issue 1.
It's still, I think, one of the least read Tom King books, though.
That's wild.
Well,
not for much longer since it's greenlit for a movie.
Well, and because he was, Gunn noted his work on, this book as being part of the, the new DCU. So, yeah.
All righty. I can't show you on my camera because
we'll have to take your word for it.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a great series called The Brave and the Bold Volume 3, and it's the one where it ran maybe 30-something issues. But this is
a JMS. Is this a JMS?
Yeah,
one?
It was some of it. Some of it was JMS. Some of it was Mark Waid. This particular one is Wade and Perez. They did the first maybe 15 issues. Well, at least Perez did, but Wade maybe went a little bit longer. But this is The Brave and the Bold number 6, and it's Green Lantern and Batman. And that first several issues was one giant story arc. And if you guys ever want to read some really quality books from the 2000s, this came out in 2007, go to this. And Scott, you've talked about it before. I forget which issue it was, whether it was the
prequel, the Batgirl, we'll not say anything more, but we talked about it when we talked about Killing Joke. Is that issue? Was it 28 or 30?
Yeah, it sounds right. 28 or 38 or probably 28.
Yeah, you read that after you read Killing Joke. It's a must read after that. So.
Yeah. But this is in the same vein. I mean, you're talking. I mean, as far as quality, it's in the same vein. It's probably some of the most recent reminders of good storytelling of superhero stories for me, because anything after maybe 2015 just starts. It's fewer and far between, and but you can't go wrong. This whole series. Some are better than others, but every issue is really good. Brave and the Bold, Volume 3.
Right. Okay, and Shad, what do we got coming up on episode 177 of the
177? We're going to be doing pre-orders, the next phase book, all that good stuff. Yep.
All right, and Mike, if somebody wanted to reach out to you, where would they do that at?
A couple different ways. Mike Atchison 5 on X and m.atchison90 at gmail.com. Or sometimes, it's ironic because we actually get some of our feedback on Facebook, and we never really mention that we have the Campus Comics Cast Facebook page. So you can always leave a comment there. Scott usually posts episodes, puts them up to let you know when it's out. And you can, if you don't feel like sending an email, you can just send a quick comment.
And then, of course, podcasts at birdcomics.com. Yep. And our podcast network may be growing, but we'll wait and see. So, Shad, what about you?
You can find me on Facebook at Shad Schubert, SHAAD SCHUBERT, and I've posted a TikTok, so I'm going to try to do that regularly with some music stuff. So check me out there.
Heck yeah.
I'm Scott Reed. You can find me at burgcomics.com, BURG Comics, with links to my social media pages and eBay store. And we'll be back soon with Next Phase.
No, I haven't touched anything. Since we last talked, I don't think I've read anything except Cosmic Detective. And hopefully JSA JLA. Oh yeah, I've read all those, yeah. I've only read Homework, yeah. And A Time to Kill by John Grisham. Oh, okay. But Shad, I hope you're muted because you were laughing, I didn't hear you. Oh, no, that was a silent laugh. Oh, okay, good. He was like, you had the whole jolliness, but no audio, so I thought. Those sneaky silent laughs. Okay, all right, just checking.